What's up, everyone? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY. Why? A year ago, the same thing happened to my voice, and it's never happened to me before where I lost my voice. And I tried to battle through it. At the time, I was doing 4 hours of radio, and then again on the weekends. And I think I was actually doing night shifts on the national network. So it's difficult for your voice to recover when you're talking a lot. I didn't do a lot of talking yesterday or this morning. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY. As always, presented by Bet Parks and Central City Toyota. What's up, everybody? I have a little bit of Gatorade here that I can try to get it going a little bit. Big show today. Tim McManus of ESPN, my old buddy, T-Mac, coming up at 8:40. We'll discuss the Eagles and his thoughts and what he kind of thinks is going on with the team. Because he's been around this team, this organization for a long time, covering the team for ESPN. And there's nobody better. Tim is the best. So he's going to join us at 8:40. Does he think that there's internally a lot going on or anything going on? Because if you listen to the Eagles, nothing's going on. Brandon Graham misspoke. Everything's fine. I thought Nick Sirianni did a really good job yesterday in handling the situation. Brandon did not necessarily do anybody any favors, especially he's not even playing. So he's not playing. He had surgery. He's out for the season. Hey, guys, go ahead. Everybody's going to have to answer questions about what I said on my radio show. And I love Brandon, believe me. But we're going to get into Flyers won last night. We have some Phillies news. So this is going to be very short and sweet, and we're going to get right to Tyler for the headlines. But I have to say this because yesterday my routine is get off the air, go home, pick up my daughter, whatever. And then I'm kind of cruising around looking for stories, maybe putting some stuff out that we did from the show. And all I could find yesterday was, F you, Philadelphia media. It's your fault. Brandon Graham didn't actually say what you're trying to have him say. This is all your imagination. Fake news. You're creating something that didn't happen. A.J. Brown said what he said after the game. Nobody asked him for that. Brandon Graham said what he said on his radio show. No one put him in the Cobra clutch and made him give any information, really. But it was so that I had that, and then I had the biggest story in the country right now, which is the killer of the United Healthcare CEO. Is it Luigi Maggioni? Yeah, everybody, it's a conspiracy. He didn't do it. Like literally, I click on one, and I go to, for the most part, I go to social media for news. I don't go to social media to go down a rabbit hole and fight with people or whatever. It's a really, really good way to get news. I get most of my sports news from that. Now, with clicking on a couple Luigi Maggioni stories, I get every friggin' conspiracy theory retweet in the world that he didn't do this. So yesterday, fake Eagles news, media created. They didn't do anything. We're just making it up. And Luigi Maggioni framed, despite the obvious evidence that's out there that points to him being the killer. So that was what I did yesterday, and I quickly logged off. And I have no intention of talking about any of this again, other than with Tim, because I want to see what Tim McManus has to say. He reported after the season, he reported in training camp, the internal issues that were going on with the Eagles last season when they fell apart. And the question is, are there internal issues going on right now? Brandon Graham would have you believe that there are, but that is being walked back. So we'll talk to Tim about that coming up at 8:40. But a lot to get into from last night because, listen, the Flyers are riding high. The Phillies have a ton of stuff going on. Let's get to the headlines with Tyler Zulli a little bit early this morning. Tyler, what is going on,
Hey,
brother?
good morning. I just need to ask, did you just go through puberty for the second time? Because
That sounded like Peter
that was
Brady.
rough, man. Like, listen, everybody has voice cracks and voice slips. The very beginning of the show, that's entirely different. I've done it a million times, but believe me,
Not like that.
my voice is cracked a million times on the air, and you make fun of yourself and you move on. I don't know if it's ever happened right off the jump like that.
I was revving up because I didn't, I hadn't spoken today out loud until Tyler walked in. Obviously, I go to bed, you go to sleep. Sometimes I talk to myself. I don't think I did that today, at least out loud. And Tyler comes in, and I'm like, "Hey, Tyler, what's going on?" And like the first words,
nothing came out.
They were rough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was rough. So I'm like, "Oh, crap."
Yeah, I mean, I feel you. Most of the time, the first person I talk to in the morning is the Wawa cashier.
Yeah.
Because so my apartment's small, right? So my wife is sleeping, the baby's sleeping. And not only that, but like I don't want to. If I rile up the dog or rile up the cat, the other one gets going, and then it's just chaos in my house. So I'm tiptoeing around like a a church mouse in the morning at 5 a.m. So the first person I normally talk to is the Wawa cashier, and then myself when I have concerts in my car. In the morning,
gotcha,
in the morning when I think I'm Freddie Mercury. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Sometimes you don't speak to somebody this early in the morning for like 45 minutes to an hour after you wake up.
Yeah, I had forgot that I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm having a voice issue right now. So hopefully, and maybe you can clip that, and then that can be I would love I'll go home and clip it because like I thought I was trying to rev up to get started, and man, I got nothing, brother. I got nothing.
Well, we'll get you through. It's only an hour. It's not 4 hours of radio.
It's not 4 hours of radio.
But you did bring up the Flyers. We'll start there. It was listen, the final was 5-3. They win this game by 2 goals. It was not a 5-3 game for most of the game. The Flyers were dominant. I believe midway through the second period, Columbus had 6 shots on net. The Flyers were the better team for a majority of the game. They were up 5-1 early in the third period. I think like about a minute and 50-ish into the third period. They made it 5-1 on the Morgan Frost goal, minute 55 to be exact.
Yep.
Columbus gets a goal with about 8.5 to play to make it 5-2. They score with 30-some-odd seconds left to make it 5-3. It was a kind of a weird angle. It was a screenshot. They end up losing this game 5-3. The Flyers realistically were the better team for the entirety of the game. Matvei Michkov with 2 points in this one. Another pair of assists for Michkov. And, John, I went and looked at the Calder Trophy odds on most platforms.
Oh.
Matvei Michkov leads just about every platform, between our friends over at Bet Parks and all the other outlets as well, somewhere in the plus 100 to plus 150 range. Matvei Michkov is across the board the front runner to win the Calder Trophy for the Rookie of the Year in the NHL this season.
Oh, man.
Obviously, a lot of hockey left to play, but he's kind of starting to distance himself from the Macklin Celebrinis and those type of guys.
I love Celebrini.
Kid can play. He's just Michkov's having an awesome year.
Like the only thing you would wonder is because he just turned 20 yesterday, is does he run out of gas? It's a long season. Does he run out of gas later on? Is there an injury or whatever? But I saw my buddy Jason Bertitas put this out there. Said in the completed 14 games since Michkov was a healthy scratch, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points, plus 13. So, and remember,
that feels like it was an eternity ago, by the way.
Yeah, 14 games since he had 2 straight where he was a healthy scratch. He responded, brother. 17 points plus 13. And that's awesome because he didn't pout. He didn't say, you know what, F you, Tortorella. I'm going to wait and you're going to get fired and I'm going to have a new coach come in. Dude responded. So a guy, he just turned 20 years old. So he's showing maturity and the dude can play.
Yep.
This is awesome. You need talent in sports. This dude's talented as anybody.
And I will say this now, the Flyers who, are hovering around the 500 mark and have hovered around the 500 mark for most of the season. They're 13-12-4 now. They're 7-4-3 on the road this year. Their road numbers have been excellent.
Hey.
And I know that some of the teams they've beaten on the road have been at times lesser teams, right? Columbus is not very good. The Blues are middle of the pack. They're at about 30 points. But they've played some good teams on the road too. Like a 4-3 loss to Florida. It's a really good Florida team. They played tough. They lose 4-3. 6-4 to Carolina. Carolina's, going to be in the thick of things as they always are. 37 points. They've done a really nice job on the road for the most part. And they're 13-12-4. They have 30 points. They're a point ahead of the Rangers, who many expected to be a cup contender. The Rangers were 2-8 in their last 10,
Oh,
even after signing Igor Shesterkin to like the largest goaltender contract in the history of the NHL. They're above the Islanders. They're above Pittsburgh. Columbus is not very good, even though they're only 3 points back of the Flyers. They just feel like they're just not quite nearly the same team, even though they actually have a better goal differential in the season. Flyers sit at about 30 points right now, or they do sit at 30 points right now, kind of in the middle portion of the Eastern Conference.
if the playoffs started today, the Flyers would be in the playoffs. Now they have a couple games in hand on the Rangers and some other teams there, but still, like, man, it's hard to make the playoffs in hockey as opposed to the NBA. There's so many of those teams that are lumped together. Like Columbus has 27, Pittsburgh, Islanders, Rangers, they're all right there. But hey, listen, our expectation was to be entertained this year, and they've played some entertaining hockey.
Some of these teams towards the bottom that are 4 or 5 points away from the Flyers, I think the good teams they're going to start separating themselves, and the bad teams are going to start separating themselves. Montreal is a minus 22 in 28 games. I just don't think they're a particularly good team. The Sabres have lost 7 consecutive games. I don't know what's going on in Buffalo. They just continue to struggle. They've lost 7 in a row. Detroit is not playing particularly good hockey. They're at minus 15. The Penguins, who are only 2 points back of the Flyers, have the worst goal differential in the NHL at minus 30. And they have 28 points. That could be a team that may start to fall backwards as well. They've scored 86 goals, which is a decent number, but they've given up 116. It's the most in the NHL this year. I think some of the teams towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference are going to start to distance themselves the wrong way. Some of the good teams, of course, are going to start to distance themselves the right way, and then it leaves which of the two groupings do the Flyers find themselves in?
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, the fact that we're excited and talking about it at 8:12, 12 minutes into the show for a couple minutes here is a win. So good one last night.
Yeah, so let's get to some news across Major League Baseball. A massive contract was signed yesterday by the New York Yankees. It seems like they're turning their monetary attention since they lost out on the Juan Soto sweepstakes. They're going to start acquiring some big-name players. They started to do it yesterday. Max Fried signs an 8-year, $218 million deal with the Yankees. It is the largest guaranteed contract for a left-handed pitcher in the history of baseball. It is the 12th contract that the Yankees have given out in franchise history that is at least $100 million, which ties which takes the lead over the LA Dodgers for such type contracts. Fried is 30 years old. He's a 2-time All-Star. Over the past 5 seasons, he's posted a 2.81 ERA. Only Corbin Burns is better in that span.
Right.
He's dealt with some injuries, the blister stuff, and some other kind of lingering injury issues. But Max Fried tied to the Yankees for 8 years and a lot of money.
Yeah, good. You know what? Like, good signing by the Yankees. He's a good starting pitcher. Especially with the amount of money that's being given, or it's going to be given the starters, is probably going to be huge. So I'll be curious to see what some of these other contracts look like. But to me, that feels like a win for the Yankees with Max Fried. Now, like, you wonder, and we'll talk about more with the Phillies coming up here in a second. But it felt like at the beginning of this offseason that the Phillies were really ready to make some moves and change some things around. I don't know if I feel like that's really going to happen at this point. But, all right. So what else do we have here with baseball?
Just real quick to wrap up that Fried conversation is as I said, the 5th largest contract all time for a pitcher. I'm going to tell you the 4 guys ahead of him. You tell me if you think the contracts were valuable or are going to be valuable, because some of them are newer.
Right.
Shohei Ohtani, 10 years, $700 million.
Yeah.
Pretty darn good player. And I think you could have given him $1 billion and nobody would have batted an eye. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 12 years, $325 million.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies were very interested in him, and he's the slow start to the season. He was good. He was good. It's a lot of money, though.
Garrett Cole, 9 years, $324.
Yeah, absolutely good.
And then the only other one ahead of him was 7 years, $245 million for Steven Strasburg.
Which did not end up working out well. They won a World Series, but, I mean, he barely pitched after that. Yeah, this feels like Fried's, it's a safe contract. You're going 8 years. I mean, going 8 years with a pitcher is, like, you don't want to do it. You may lose a year or two to injury. Maybe he needs Tommy John in those 8 years. Maybe he throws his shoulder out and he sucks, right? They gave Taijuan Walker 4 years and $72 million. I'd rather give Fried 8 for 212
So,
than that.
barring your guys that make a ton of starts, your Aaron Nola type of pitchers who like seemingly don't miss starts, there's almost a feel to when you sign a pitcher to a long-term extension that you're going to lose like a year's worth of time to injury, which is terrible to say, right? It's horrible to speculate, guys going to get hurt, but it's just the reality of the situation. And I'm not talking about it necessarily has to be, UCL Tommy John type stuff that shuts you down for a year, but a shoulder and you miss a month, and a glute and you miss a week, and and those type of things add up to, like, there's a feel of like, if you get an 8-year deal, you're going to pitch 7 years worth of starts.
So with Fried, we'll start in 2019, 33 or 30 starts, 2020, 11 starts.
Well,
so he was hurt.
2020 was the COVID year. Everybody only made 12 starts.
But that's all it was? Okay, so my bad.
Yeah, it was 60-game season.
So he goes 28 starts, 30 starts, 14 starts, 29 starts. Because he missed a little bit of time this year, if I remember.
A little bit of time. Most of his missed time was last year. If you remember, they brought him back for the postseason in 22. Was it 22 or 23?
It was 23 because he had 30 starts in 22. So like 3 of the last 4 years, he like you give 28, 30, 29, 30 starts. That's fine. That's great. And he's been durable. Left-handed starter in Yankee Stadium is very important. Max Fried's a really good pitcher, man. It's a good signing for the Yanks.
Yeah, a couple of trades happened last night too. We'll start with the one that impacts the NL East. The Marlins are sending third baseman first baseman Jake Berger to the Texas Rangers in exchange. They'll get 2 shortstop prospects, Echedri Vargas, excuse me for probably butchering that name, but Echedri Vargas and Max Acosta, and a left-handed starting pitcher, Brian Mendoza. In exchange for Berger, the 28-year-old has 4 years of team control. Now heading over to Texas. He hit 63 home runs with the White Sox and the Marlins over the last 2 years. He played 278 games in the last 2 seasons. The Rangers have kind of been shuffling first and third over the last couple of years. Maybe Berger slides into a little bit of a platoon role between third and DH. You see what they kind of do with that scenario.
Right.
But the Rangers acquire another power-hitting bat to go play in Arlington.
Yeah, Tyler and I were talking about this morning. You feel like Berger always killed the Phillies with a home run. You look at the numbers.
Yeah, sub 200 against the Phillies, which is shocking.
Yeah, he sucks. I guess I remember every hit he ever got against the Phillies. I hated him.
Yeah, and one other trade to report. The Blue Jays are acquiring Gold Glove winning, potentially Platinum Glove winning this year, Andres Gimenez from the Cleveland Guardians, the second baseman, in exchange for Spencer Horwitz, and there's a couple other smaller names in the trade as well. Toronto will take on the remainder of Gimenez's contract. He signed a 7-year, $106 million deal that runs through the 2029 season, including a club option for the 2030 season. To me, John, he is one of probably the 3 best defensive players in baseball.
Right.
Had a really good offensive year a couple seasons ago. Last year was not nearly as productive offensively. If he can give you any kind of pop and any kind of drive, the defense is worth every penny. Now it's a matter of what kind of offense can he play in Toronto. But Andres Gimenez is heading to Toronto to play with the Blue Jays. All
right, so we'll come up. There's some Philly stuff from yesterday, so I want to get to that on the other side because Alec Bohm not getting shot by the Phillies. That, according to Rob Thompson. We'll play the video and the sound for you to hear that. And Nolan Arenado, a possible replacement at third base. The Phillies are on his wish list as he has a no trade. We will discuss that. Could he possibly be coming to Philly? Would you want him? That's all coming up next on Philly with John Marks. Don't go anywhere. All right, listen, let's talk about Glatt hair restoration for a second. That's right. Glatt hair. Now under the direction of world-renowned plastic surgeon, Dr. Ken Morgenstern. And I talked to Dr. Morgenstern. We had lunch. He looks just like Howie Roseman. And when I say that, I mean like a good, like not that Howie Roseman's not an attractive man, but like he's an attractive Howie Roseman. Looked like he could be his little bit of an older brother, Dr. Morgenstern. But the bottom line is Glatt hair restoration, Morgenstern Medical. You're getting the best in the business when it comes to hair. So if you're thinning, if you're shedding, if you're going bald, if you're bald, and you've heard me talk about Glatt hair for a long time, just check them out. Go to glathairmctr.com, GLAT hairmctr.com, and check out the website. See my before and after pictures. Get some more information. Here's something also you can do. DM me, email me. I've been talking about Glad Hair Restoration for a long time. And when I say email me or DM me, I'll get people that email me and DM me and say, hey, tell me a little bit more. You said you have pictures you can share with me. What did it look like right after the procedure? I documented it all. I can send you information. I can actually hand you off to Lisa and Cheryl, the hair team, and they can answer more questions for you. Complimentary one-on-one consultation. They'll pinpoint the best course of treatment. They'll give you your options. Do you need hair restoration? Do you want to have one of the other treatments that can slow down the thinning process? Telling you, best in the business, most experience, over 30 years of experience with hair restoration. All right, let's do it. 610-980-4000, 610-980-4000, or glathairmctr.com. That is glathairmctr.com. Got to check them out. Love the people over there. I'll be stopping over before the holidays to check everybody out and see how they're doing. All right, let's talk about Rite Aid for a second, because you have the flu season going on right now. Listen, you can listen to me talk. All right, so you know that I'm going through some issues that happen when it comes flu season, right? So when I go to Rite Aid, I'm always stocking up. I was there getting children's Motrin because my daughter had a fever over the weekend, so we kicked all the Motrin. So I had to get Motrin, but flu shot. And this is the time of year to do it. If you already haven't had it done, right now's the time to get a flu shot. The CDC recommends that you get it every year because your immune system declines over time. So you can protect yourself by getting your annual flu shot at Rite Aid today. Flu vaccinations can reduce a child's risk of severe life-threatening influenza by 75%. So protect your family, protect yourself by getting flu shots at Rite Aid every single day. And when you go to the pharmacy, stock up on cold, cough, flu, and allergy essentials. Rite Aid has what you need to get you through the season. Just walk into your local Rite Aid, or you can schedule it at riteaid.com. State, age, and health restrictions apply. Ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for details. All right, we're back with some Phillies stuff. All right, Tyler, what's going on with the Phillies? I know Rob Thompson spoke yesterday. The winter meetings are going on. A lot out there right now. What's going on with the Phillies, sir?
Yeah, so obviously we know that Jordan Romano was the acquisition that they made so far early in the winter meeting process, the free agent process, and right on cue, collectively, Phillies fans lose their minds because it was a day after Juan Soto signs a deal with the Mets, and I think people just immediately go, well, they got Soto and we got Romano. What are we doing here?
Right.
Listen, building blocks, right? You know, you're not going to go out and immediately just make the next big move. It doesn't tend to happen. This isn't a video game, right? You don't see Juan Soto signs and then you going up your offer to, you know, whoever's available that you like, Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez or whatever the case may be. But yesterday, Rob Thompson was on MLB Network yesterday and was talking about Alec Bohm specifically. And Alec Bohm's been a hot point of conversation over the last, probably close to 2 months now since the end of the playoffs. Will they trade him? Will they move on? What's the return value of Alec Bohm? Rob Thompson spoke yesterday on MLB Network, on MLB Tonight, made it pretty apparent that the Phillies are not shopping Alec Bohm, but maybe they're listening.
Really improved so much. You know, and I know the rumors are flying all over the place. We're not shopping him, but people are approaching us on him, so you got to listen. But this guy's improved so much, not just physically, but mentally over the course of the year, the 3-4 years he's been in the big leagues. Bobby Dickerson, who Buck knows very well, has done an unbelievable job with Alec, be better defensively, throwing accuracy, glove action. He's really a good hitter because he does the things that I was talking about not chasing. He does get good pitches to hit. He uses the entire field. He makes contact. That's why he's so good hitting behind Harper.
Yeah. All right. Well, all right, Topper. Like, yeah, they may not be right now calling every team and saying, hey, Alec Bohm, give us your best offer. We're going to trade him, because I don't think that's the way they approach Alec Bohm in the offseason at all. I think they looked at the dynamics of this club and they said, all right, like, it feels like we need to change a couple of things around. So, but what can we do? They're limited. Trey Turner's not going anywhere. Bryson Stott's not going anywhere. Bryce Harper's not going anywhere. If they could trade Nick Castellanos and get something back in return, I'm sure they would, but they can't. His salary's high. They're not going to pay down his salary unless they're getting something back in return. They're not. Like Brandon Marsh, Rojas, they'd like to add an outfielder. They're probably going to add that platoon-type outfielder. What can you change in the lineup? So, like, is there a problem, or did they have issues with Bohm's immaturity? He got benched during the postseason. And this is something that's been talked about for a while. So, yes, I think that they were interested in having dialogue to see if they were going to trade Alec Bohm. So, like, we're mincing words here. It's like, were they shopping him? Well, they weren't shopping him. They were listening for trades. I believe that they were actively having conversations about moving Alec Bohm, and it didn't go anywhere. If you look at the reporting and you look at a lot of the things that were out there, the Phillies were trying to use him in a trade for Crochet or a trade with the Mariners. There was interest for Alec Bohm, but there weren't teams that were interested in giving up major league ready players for Alec Bohm. If you wanted to get rid of Alec Bohm, you probably could get a couple of good prospects and maybe a reliever or something like that. But the White Sox don't want Alec Bohm. They're in a major rebuild. Alec Bohm's under contract for the next 2 years, and then he's a free agent. He's an above-average player. He's good. Doesn't help the White Sox. And the Mariners aren't giving up one of their good young starting pitchers for Alec Bohm. It doesn't make sense. So we can sit here, and Topper can sit here and say, oh, we're not shopping Alec Bohm. If they could have gotten what they considered good value for Alec Bohm, they would have traded him. But this team is committed to winning a World Series right now. They're trying to get back. And trading Alec Bohm just to trade Alec Bohm, they're not going to do, as they shouldn't. So I don't have a problem with Alec Bohm coming back. Alec Bohm is a pretty good player. Tyler, how do I feel about them running it back with essentially the same lineup? I don't necessarily love it.
I think that that's a fair sentiment to have, right? Like, I think that you could say I'm not thrilled with the fact that they feel a little dormant, and maybe monetarily speaking, they're a little hamstrung, as we've talked about not going over that next apron. But you could be upset about them being a little bit dormant this offseason. But the reality is, we've talked about it plenty. Like, what is their evaluation of Alec Bohm from not just a production standpoint, but from a monetary standpoint as well? And it's why I kept leading me back to, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. I think you and I talked about it. I've talked about it on the Philly show. I think Alec Bohm is destined to be the Phillies' starting third baseman in 2025. And I think from a monetary standpoint, the reasoning is, he's relatively cheap for a starting third baseman. We've talked about the arbitration numbers, somewhere between $8 and $11 million this upcoming season, depending. My guess would be that Alec Bohm's going to win his arbitration case. He's going to come in with, I was an all-star. I hit this from, April till June. I had 90-plus RBIs. I missed time and still was on pace for, big double numbers and the best year of my career. My guess is he probably wins his arbitration case, but even at that, it's probably 10 million, right? 9.5, 10 million. Yeah, they're going to view that as monetary value. And like you said, the teams that are, that they would like to acquire players from, potentially Chicago, the White Sox. Like, I'll even throw in the Chicago Cubs because of the Seiya Suzuki conversation. He has a no-trade clause, of course, but there's been pretty concrete evidence that he wants to be an outfielder and not a DH. The Phillies need an outfielder. Even if Seiya Suzuki is not a particularly good defensive outfielder, he can hit. And I think the Phillies have used that model for a long time now, where if you're baseline average or even a little bit worse than baseline average defensively, but you can hit, that's what matters to them. Here's the problem. The Cubs, a team that maybe the Phillies could be in trade conversations with, just traded for Isaac Paredes last trade deadline. They don't need a third baseman. There's a lot of teams that maybe make sense and don't line up from what the return value is. I think you're right. If a team calls and said, hey, we'll give you 2 prospects in this relief pitcher, the Phillies are going to hang the phone up because it doesn't help them win. But if the Phillies call and say, hey, we want Garrett Crochet and we want Alec Bohm to be a part of the deal, the White Sox are going to hang up. If the Phillies call Seattle and say, hey, we want Bryce Miller or Logan Gilbert or George Kirby, Seattle's going to go, hang up. Not enough, right? So I think the Phillies are in a weird spot with Alec Bohm where, to me, it seems like the potentially best fit for Alec Bohm in terms of a trade may end up being no place at all, other than an unforeseen move where Houston does not get Alex Bregman back and then they go scrambling for a third baseman. But I do truly believe come March, whatever that first game of the year is, or early April or late March or whatever it is, the Phillies are going to announce their lineup, and Alec Bohm is going to be the starting third baseman.
And I'm okay with that.
And there's not a problem with that.
I'm okay with that. It's fine. I just wondered, did they misread the market on Bohm? Because I thought going into the offseason, like, he's a good player, but just think about it from another team's perspective. What the Phillies are going to want for Bohm is a player that's playing right now at least up to the level of an Alec Bohm in a different position. So maybe it's an outfielder, maybe it's a left fielder, maybe it's a starting pitcher. So he was a starter in the All-Star game last year. It doesn't mean that by the end of the season he's really an All-Star starter, or he will be again. But still, Phillies aren't just giving him away. You didn't have to move him, and the Phillies aren't moving him. They would have easily included him with Garrett Crochet in a Garrett Crochet trade. They would have easily traded him to Seattle for one of those young starting pitchers. They would have easily moved him for another player that's playing right now at a relatively high level. The market wasn't out there. Those teams want to hang on to their young players as well. So, and it's now the dominoes, because if you trade Bohm, now you need to replace Bohm at third base. And that's when the dominoes fall to where they need to sign for this guy. Like Nolan Arenado, which is the next part of this conversation. He put out, or MLB.com, or a reporter for MLB.com put out that there's 6 teams that he'd be willing to be traded to. And the Phillies are on that list. If the Phillies needed a third baseman right now, if they traded Bohm, I would consider Nolan Arenado. Would the Cardinals have to include some salary in relief into it? Probably. He's a good player. He's still a good player. He's also going to be 34. And when you're 35 and 36, guess what? He's not as good at 34 as he was at 32. He's not going to be as good at 35 as he was at 34. You're going to get a player that's in decline. So for a team that's trying to win right now, like, yeah, Nolan Arenado would have made sense. I'd rather have Bohm at this point. I think there's more upside with Bohm. You saw progress. Here's the other thing. The whole immaturity stuff, it's real. It frustrates the Phillies. They benched them during the playoffs. So, hopefully this is a learning thing from him. And the fact that Rob Thompson did call him and said to him, listen, he even said it in the clip. He said, this is the first time that he's gone through this. Players get shopped. There's a lot of trade rumors. I mean, think about how many different players in Philadelphia are rumored to be being traded, right? And Alec Bohm is a young player. Normally, the young players aren't the trade rumors. It's when your team sucks and you want to trade everybody off because you know the team's not good enough. It was different with Alec Bohm here. When Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley and those players got traded, or players in the final year of a contract that you know you're not bringing back because the Phillies aren't great, those players don't take offense to it because it's like, hey, the time's over. I want to go win. Trading Alec Bohm away from a team that's been in the playoffs the last couple of years, you're saying to Alec Bohm, you're not good enough and we want to trade you. So this is definitely a lot different than other trade rumors. And the one thing I appreciate about Rob Thompson is he has really good emotional intelligence. And he's great with people. It's what makes him a good manager. And having the conversation with Bohm now and downplaying the fact that they were shopping him is very, very good strategy by the Phillies. So I think the Phillies actually have handled this situation very well. They determined that moving Bohm would be something they would be willing to do, but they weren't just going to move him to move him. And when the market wasn't out there for him, they quickly pivoted, and Rob Thompson called him, and they went on the PR campaign to say, hey, we're not moving him, but we take phone calls. We're going to listen. So, Tyler, you are correct. Alec Bohm will be the Phillies' starting third baseman in 2024.
Well, and you bring up Nolan Arenado, and the list of teams is 6 deep, and it includes the Phillies, yes, and I believe the other, I just had it here, the other 5 teams included the Mets, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Angels, surprisingly, and I believe it was the Padres, and I'll find it for you in just a second.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So a bunch of teams that are going to compete in 2025, and then the Angels, right? I don't know exactly why the Angels, but he put them on the list. It was the
He's from California.
Okay, that would make more sense. So it was the Phillies, the Mets, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Padres, and the LA Angels. Now, you brought up Arenado's contract, and we talked about the $9 to $11 million or whatever it is that Alec Bohm is going to get next year.
Right.
Nolan Arenado is due 21 next season. He's due 16 and 26. He's due 15 in 27. That's the first year that his no trade clause doesn't exist, right? So he had a no trade clause through 26. He would have to waive it anytime between now and the end of the 2026 season. That's why that 6-team list has come about. His defense, people talk about his declining defense, and his defense has declined, but his defense has declined from like the best defensive player in baseball to
he's above average
good
now.
defensive
Right.
player. Like his range values are still there. His defensive run saved. Like a couple of years ago, he was a 52 on fielding run saved and defensive run saved metrics. Last year, he was a 6. What does that mean exactly? It means that his range has come down a little bit. He's not exactly the same defender that he was, in the 10 years in a row that he was winning the Gold Glove. If you remember last year, it was the first time in a decade he wasn't nominated for a Gold Glove. He's still a very good defender. He's just not the elite Nolan Arenado that we saw in the late 2010s into the early portions of the 2020s. What does Nolan Arenado still do well at the plate? He doesn't strike out a lot. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. What does Nolan Arenado has he struggled out with over the last couple of years? He's not hitting the ball particularly hard. He's not squaring the ball up particularly well.
He's declining.
His exit velo is in the 9th percentile. Now, he hit 272 last year, and his OBP was still decent at 325. His power numbers have dipped. He hit nearly a career low in home runs. Other than basically, his rookie season and the year of the 2020, he hit 16 home runs.
He's still good. He's still a good player. If the Phillies needed a third baseman, it would make sense that they would at least look into him.
He is a good
hard.
player on a great player's contract, and I'm not sure the Phillies are going to take monetary value plus trade capital to acquire a guy who is probably on the decline of his career. Like 2022, I was all in on moving Alec Bohm and other pieces to acquire this guy. He hit 293, had a 360 OBP, slugged almost 540. His OPS was almost 900, 40-plus doubles, 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs. Hit 100 RBIs for like 7 straight full seasons.
Right.
He's now down into the 70s. Now RBI totals are dictated upon your teammates getting on base and you driving runs in. So it's not entirely on you. But his offensive numbers are trending in the wrong direction. His defense is still good. It's just not excellent anymore like it was 2-3 years ago. The money value, the decline in productivity is a consideration. I think between the fact that they're going to have to pay this guy for another 2 years and give up trade capital, I'm not in on Arenado anymore.
Yeah, I think Bohm's coming back. So, but it would have been interesting if Bohm does get traded or if he would have been traded. All right, Tim McManus is coming up next. Dude's been on the beat for a long time. What's going on with the Eagles? To me, this doesn't feel like the team falls apart like last year. But what does Tim think is going on in the locker room with A.J. Brown, with Jalen Hurts, and what is going on with the passing game? Because really, once we get past like he said, she said, and their relationship's fine, passing game hasn't been great. A.J. hasn't been getting targets. What does Tim McManus of ESPN think? That's coming up right after this on Philly with John Marks. Don't go anywhere. But hey, listen. If you have a leaky pipe, Ace Hardware Home Services. Visit acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. So what does that mean, right? Well, if you have something that breaks, right, like your HVAC, it's like the heater's not working. What do? Ace Hardware Home Services. Leaky faucet, toilet problem, local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repairs to seasonal maintenance to installations and upgrades. So they listen to your goals, and they know the job isn't completed until you're satisfied. The power of the Ace brand that strives to be the best, the most trusted provider of home preservation services. Free estimates on equipment installation and replacement. A wide range of residential maintenance, installation, and home repair services are available. Again, that includes plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical. Free estimates. Check them out. Ace Hardware Home Services to get started on your next project. acehardwarehomeservices.com. All right, let's talk about, by the way, the Eagles on BetParx. Birds are still 5-point favorites over the Steelers. And still standing strong. Birds -5 over the Steelers at BetParx right now. But listen, the Excite Center at Parx Casino. So if you're looking to take the old lady or maybe go on a date, Excite Center at Parks Casino is amazing. It's a great venue. Pennsylvania's #1 casino, close to everybody. Street Road exit off of 95, right off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The Excite Center is a state-of-the-art entertainment venue inside Parks Casino, right in Bucks County, in the Philly suburbs. Named one of the best places for concerts and comedy, and a great place to see the country's best comedians and music headliners. Like, I know Tyler saw the Sugar Ray guy. Or he wanted to, but
you're so hung up on the Sugar Ray thing.
But like, it really is an awesome place to see everything. It really is. I've been to a couple concerts there, and it's the one and only sportsbook app I would ever recommend. The BetParks sportsbook app and online casino. Pro football right now, the college playoff. Oh my God, I can't wait for the college playoff. It's going to be amazing. So get to BetParks right now, parkscasino.com for all of the details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 and in PA, New Jersey, Michigan, or Maryland. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet BetParks. Check them out. Yep. I don't know if Tim McManus isn't a Sugar Ray guy. He's more like a Nickelback guy, I think. I don't know if no?
Nickelback. Come on now. Sugar Ray, Johnny Marks is I Just Want to Fly. Is that right?
I Just Want to Fly, and every morning there's a na.
So the one reason I remember that is I think it was Game 3 of the 2001 Finals, where the Sixers had come back and they were losing to the Lakers pretty bad in that game, and Sugar Ray was the halftime performer, and he
Seriously?
goes, you want to fly with me, Philly? And everybody just goes, ooh.
Why do I not remember that? Yeah, now
that's
Sugar Ray
stuck in my brain for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how you remember things like that. Sugar Ray is now a part of Wegmans Rock. I spent a lot of time in Wegmans, and the rotating Wegmans music. Sugar Ray has entered the rotation. There's another song that Sugar Ray is on the Wegmans rotation. But anyway, Tim McManus from ESPN joins us. What's up, Timmy?
What's up, dude? I miss you. How you doing?
My voice is cracking because I've lost my voice, so I apologize, but I'm okay.
God, you sound great.
All right, so take me through. Brandon Graham on his radio show says that Jalen and AJ aren't friends anymore. Now, the same night, he's scheduled to go right from his radio show. Chris Long is having a benefit, I guess, for his charity. So you're scheduled to already be at the benefit. So you're already going to be there that night because Brandon talked to you at the Chris Long thing, right?
No. So I just texted Graham after that stuff came out, and I was like, listen, dude, if you want to talk, give me a shout. And he did. And, he kind of wanted to add further context to what he said. Basically, like, I made assumptions and, I didn't know the whole story. And I basically did the same thing that I was telling them not to do, which is go to the media. So he was obviously feeling bad about it. Obviously wasn't trying to stir it up. He was trying to do good. And then, obviously that backfired on him a little bit.
And he kept yapping. What the problem was, because I think originally his intent, and he did this with me when I worked with him. Darius Slay called out one of the young corners, and he like pointed at him. I forget what game it was, but it was like 2 years ago maybe. And he called him out after the game. And I had asked Brandon about it, and Brandon said, "Yeah, we don't do that here. Like, that's not the way we operate. We keep everything in house. We don't do that." So I feel like he was trying to say, AJ can't act like that after the game, but then just kind of went a step or two too far on talking about it. All right, so here's my question, because this is what I saw yesterday on social media, and I had to log off because Brandon blamed the media. Then there were a lot of fans saying, like, this is a nothing burger. This is media-driven. It's fake news. Based on you're with the team. You've been covering the team a long time. Man, you've been covering Philly sports as long as I have in this city. What is going on in the Eagles locker room? Your reporting last year showed that there was things going on with Nick Sirianni and with Jalen Hurts. Do you believe that there is an issue with chemistry, with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown, that there are problems in this Eagles locker room again this year?
So if there are problems in the Eagles locker room, I think they've been pretty well covered up to this point. Last year, John, like when you walked in there, as a good example, like as soon as they lost to the Niners, so that was really just the start of their skid. I went up to somebody in the locker room. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And that's all I said. And the next thing you know, they were just like, opening up about all their grievances. Like that's all
Wow.
it took. It was like surface level, and all it took was like a little poke, and people were like complaining about this kind of about things that were going on. So it was very evident last year. I would say that the vibes this year have been much better, much different. Sort of the big cloud of the Super Bowl hangover lifted. They did a lot of work in the offseason to make sure that they were in a better place. I think as a team, Sirianni has done a lot of work to make sure that he's in a better place, that the relationship with the quarterback is in a better place. And you've seen it on the field for the most part, where they're doing the touchdown celebrations together, or they're having an interception and they're all Cooper DeJean with his whatever this is, so they're all like the vibes have been very positive, and they're here on a 9-game win streak, and then all of a sudden this stuff happens. So I haven't really sensed that during the course of the year, but now with what Brown said after the game, and then Graham with his follow-up comments, obviously there's more digging to be done to see if it's in a fragile state like it was last year.
Yeah, you did some digging, and by training camp happened, yes, there was, and the Eagles acknowledged as much, and they talked about how they're trying to repair the relationship. When I go back and I listen to the A.J. Brown comments now after the game, they're not toxic. He doesn't throw Jalen under the bus. If you want to look at it from a different mindset, and I think Zach Berman, actually, I saw him tweet this out. He still doesn't understand why people made a big deal about it. Now, I think you're being naive to not understand why people didn't make a big deal out of the comments. But like looking at it again and reading it again, he's obviously frustrated. Devontae's obviously frustrated. If Brandon doesn't bring up what he did, the story's already over and we're not even talking about it anymore, I guess. But dude, like, is AJ, so Nick Sirianni said yesterday, Tim, that they eat lunch together. Is there a problem with the two? Are they okay? Do they have a good working relationship? I know you just said you didn't sense any locker room drama, but also, these wide receivers, when they don't get balls, and let's face it, the passing game's struggling right now. Could this be the start of things going wrong for A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts?
So in a lot of ways, Johnny Marks, the reporting's just starting on this, but I have done some like initial reach outs to people who might have a sense as it applies to them, and the people that I've reached out to have been like they're friends, like they're friends. It's not what Graham said does not reflect sort of the state of where they are. And then you saw what Sirianni said about them eating lunch together, about them praying over one another. A couple people have referenced to me the fact that they had the touchdown celebration a couple of weeks ago where they're doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air celebration or whatever. That doesn't mean there isn't tension. So I don't think it's like, I'm not sensing, at least from the early reporting, that there's like this big feud or something like that. It doesn't mean that there isn't tension or that relationships can change when you are in a pressure packed situation the way that these two are, especially coming off of a collapse. And to say that I see them interacting every day in the locker room or something like that, like I don't. I don't feel like it's maybe quite as buddy as it was when he first got here, just observationally. But that doesnesn't mean that there's like this huge feud brooding, and it's not something that I picked up on yet as I've reached out to some people.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't feel like in general that there's an issue this year. Once you start losing games, though, we know things can change. But you had said that last year they were winning games and still people were not feeling good about it. So the passing game, can it be fixed? And do you, because all year I've been kind of defending Jalen and saying, listen, this team isn't predicated on him throwing the ball 40 times a game. The formula is working. The offense runs through Saquon. The defense is much better than it is last year. But now you get to a critical time in the year where it feels like the passing game's going backwards. And now what goes in your head is, well, holy crap, if they do this in the playoffs, they can lose, right? So, like, is this a formula that can work? And what is going on with Jalen, and why does it feel like he's regressed as much as he has?
Yeah, and some of this I think is circumstantial. When we talk about the frustration bubbling to the surface, like there was always that question to be answered about when you add Saquon Barkley to the mix, who is just going to be a magnet for the ball. He's incredible. He's great. But so is A.J. Brown, and so is Devontae Smith, and there's only so many snaps to go around. And they started off the year where they were trying to find that balance. It didn't quite work. Jalen Hurts was turning the ball over too much. 7 times over the last 4 games. The offensive linemen go and knock on Nick's door. Like, listen, dude, we gotta ground and pound here. They do it, and they rattle off 9 straight. And the formula has been great, but that doesn't mean that frustration isn't going to crop up from superstar players. It was bound to happen at some point.
Right.
And it's almost like, how do you put out the flames, right? And then the question does become like, okay, you're dead last in passing attempts in the NFL, dead last. So the balance is nowhere. It's gone. The extreme has been hit. It's a run based team. Can you find a flow? And one of the comments that Brown made that are kind of not getting as much attention now because of everything that has happened since then, but he was asked, like, how tough is it to find a rhythm as a wide receiver when you're not getting opportunities? And he said, it's incredibly tough. So that kind of thing exists where there's not a lot of time on task for this passing game, especially in game, to get kind of that flow. So are you able to turn it on when you get into the playoffs and you go up against a team that is shutting Barkley down? Is Hurts going to be able to rise to that occasion and the rest of the group? Do you have enough kind of reps and rhythm to do that? And that's an outstanding question right now. I mean, they have the talent to do it, but Hurts hasn't looked great, if we're being totally honest about it. I think this past week was his worst game of the season. And there's only a few more of these games, right, John, before the real fun begins.
Yeah, I feel like that his poor play has been almost exaggerated. It's there. But when you have the capability now on social media to pick every open receiver that he doesn't hit, then it's like, oh, well, look, he missed another open receiver, to where is that happening in every game with every quarterback, right? Like, I don't know. I don't go through the film of other teams, but it is there. And the perception is that he's missing open receivers. He's missing A.J. Brown. Look at A.J. Brown, wide open. But the formula for the Eagles winning right now is Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the ball over. Saquon Barkley runs the ball well, and the defense plays great. But does that translate to the playoffs? Why do you think, if he is missing and he's not seeing these receivers or he's not throwing the ball, why? Is he worried about making a turnover? He was terrible at the beginning of the season. He was turning the ball over all over the place. He's not doing that anymore. So why is he not making these throws? Is he not seeing the field well? Is he not going through his progressions? Is he shy to pull the trigger because he doesn't want to make a mistake?
So it's hard to get into his head, but just looking at it, it seems like he's taken a more conservative approach. And I think you can't have that drastic of a turnaround in turnovers if you don't adjust things. So if you have 7 over the first 4 games, it was him and Will Levis at the top of the league in turnovers. It wasn't good. They have the bye week, they make these adjustments, and now he's had 2 and ever since then. And so that doesn't happen by accident. And there definitely are times throughout the game. Like, there was one series, was it against the Rams, maybe the opening series, where he threw it away 3 times. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, he's been throwing the ball away a lot more than he has in the past. And there definitely have been instances where it looked like he could rip it, like that second play of the game last week where A.J. Brown is streaking down the right side of the field and it's like wide open. And he decides not to do it, and he checks down to Jahan Dotson. There are examples out there where he's not ripping it as much. But, it's working. I mean, that isn't that sort of the bottom line here? Like, we don't know how much it's going to translate to the playoffs, but I think the argument against Brown making such a big deal about things at the end, or venting his frustration, however you want to frame it, is that, he's usually team-minded, but that wasn't a team-minded act. Where now the attention is on, like, okay, what's going on with the quarterback and the wide receiver? Is there drama happening instead of what the focus really should be, which is what? They're 11-2. They've won 9 straight. Why are we talking about this?
Yep, no doubt about it. How do you feel about this weekend against Pittsburgh? This is really, it's a fascinating time to play the Steelers based on what's happened this week and based on what's been happening with the passing offense. It almost seems like this is the exact time where it's like, hey, what are we? Are we gonna crumble like we did last year and head in the other direction, or are we gonna fix this and everybody gets on the same page and let's go? So, like, this is a really big measuring stick game for me as far as how does this team respond, even though they're still winning. And Tim, they're the 9-game winning streak. What are we talking about here? But still, like, this is a big game this weekend against the Steelers. It may not be a must win or a can't lose, but I want to see how the passing offense, how Nick Sirianni, how Kellen Moore, how Jalen Hurts respond to a very physical and tough Pittsburgh defense.
I think you frame it really well because this was always going to be a tough matchup. But now if they lose it, it's going to be attached with more questions. It's going to be like, oh, is that because Jalen and AJ aren't getting along? Is that because the passing offense is broken? Where you would have looked at it, I think, in another light, if this hadn't come out and it's just like, okay, they're facing a really difficult front, right? Like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and all these guys. Highsmith's going to be coming after Hurts. He's not going to have a whole lot of time to operate in the pocket, most likely. It's going to be a tough slog. The Eagles get a little bit of a break that doesn't look like Pickens is going to play for the Steelers. So that takes away Russell Wilson's top option. So it kind of feels like it's going to be a grinded out type of game that might come down to kicking some field goals. And we're also not sure what the state of the kicker is here in Philly for the first time in a long time. He's been missing some kicks here, right?
Holy cow, man. Yeah, I saw Ruben Frank put in his column that maybe it's time to start looking for another kicker. I don't believe the Eagles are going to do that, but still, he used to be Mr. Automatic. And now, I mean, Nick Sirianni punted the ball as opposed to taking a 54-yard field goal that would have put the game on ice. It would have made it a two-possession game. Meanwhile, he punts it, Mr. Aggressive. Punts it. That's a major problem, man.
Well, you're hitting on something super important, is that it's not only whether Elliott makes the kicks or not, it's how does it influence the head coach and his decision making. That's there's a domino effect when your kicker's not making the kicks like you used to. This is going to be one of those times where the Eagles haven't had a ton of close games. This is going to be one where it might really come down to it. So I'm with you. I feel like this is a huge opportunity for the Eagles to be like, you know what, just a little bit of a dust up. They end up going in, taking their care of business against a really good Steelers defense, and and extending their winning streak, and they put it behind them. Or there's going to be more questions about whether this is a 2023 redux. So this is a big one, man.
It is. It is indeed. Tim McManus, who once upon a time was my illegal intern at 9:50 a.m. way back in the day, 20 years ago now, Tim, probably close to.
Thank God nobody was paying attention, so I could get an internship at like 25 years old or whatever it was, not in school.
Quickly worked his way up. Your first full-time gig at 950 was Jody Mac's producer? Was it Jody and Harry? Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I had the McManus solo.
Okay.
And then, and then Jody and Harry after that. We did Harry and Bruno, of course.
So you produced them as well. And then Tim said, hey, listen, being a radio producer ain't going to pay my bills, brother. I got to figure something else out. So then he took to the reporting side of covering the Eagles with the station, and then was able to get in with ESPN. And dude, I'm so proud of you. The accomplishments you made, and you're a friggin' ESPN reporter for the Eagles, man. Congratulations. You know I love you.
I love you too, and I'm proud of you, and not just your career, but your decision making and the way that you focus on family. Like, I respect it all, Johnny Mark. So you're crushing it as always, man. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Great to talk to you, Timmy. I'll see you soon, buddy.
All right, brother.
Tim McManus. Shout out to everybody watching on TV. If you want to see more, go to allphly.com. There you go. Yeah, Timmy's my longtime dude. He was just like, you can tell right away with people in this business, like, can they make it or can they not make it? And it's like, oh, well, he's gonna make it, but like, kind of then where you go from there. And he was always a big football guy. Him and Pat Callahan used to have you worked with Pat.
I produced Pat for a while.
Yeah.
Not with Tim. Tim had been at ESPN. It was me and Pat and Jeff Mosher, and then it was me and Pat and Joe Torti. I produced that show for
This Week in Pro Football.
3 years, I think. 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Really good show. Tim and Pat, they would do it on, and Pat isn't like a media guy. He just was doing a football show once a week on various stations.
Doing it, yeah.
And then they came to the Fanatic, came to 950 and then the Fanatic. And then Tim, when he got the ESPN job, I remember, because I loved their show. And so I said to Tim, I'm like, you're not doing the show anymore? He's like, with the ESPN schedule, it's kind of tough to commit every Saturday morning to be doing a show. But so big fan of Tim McManus. He does such great stuff. So I appreciate him hopping on this morning. He's the best. Click over to Ant. He is live. I don't know where he is, unless Andrew Frazier texted me. He did not. So they're a Primo's somewhere. So tune in right now and find out. And go see Anthony. They're live at Primo's today. So everybody on the chat, appreciate it. Love you guys. Every morning live at 8:00. We have we go live and we have a chat community where people are watching and commenting and getting involved in the show. So if you can watch the show live on YouTube, awesome. Definitely do it. Otherwise, you can watch it whenever, right? It's available 24/7, all the stuff that we do. And our audio version podcast. I know a lot of people are you're used to listening to me on the radio. Well, if you're in your car, let's say you're coming home from work or whatever, Tyler gets the podcast up shortly after 9:00, and you can listen to the audio version of the show every day. Just search Philly with John Marks. We're back tomorrow live at 8:00. As my voice cracks on the way out. Maybe
I think that's a sign to wrap this thing up, and we'll try again tomorrow.
We'll try again tomorrow. Everybody have a good one. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.